up, people? How are you doing? I'm having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we will be discussing Michael Carrick's 4-2-3-1 formation and tactics, of course, for Middlesbrough. Now, of course, this has been requested, so I've gone and I've done my research, and I hope that what I can create in this game will satisfy your wants and needs, of course, in FIFA 23. Now, I think it's a pretty good replica of what I've seen, obviously, in the game, of course, in real life, and we're trying to replicate that in FIFA 23. So starting off, we've got Force, we've got Rogers, we've got Jones, we've got Silvera, Hackney, of course, Balasa, we've got McNair, Fry, Linehan, Ingle, and then, of course, Ding. On the bench, of course, we've got Lath, we've got Gilbert, we've got McGree, Crooks, Glover. It's quite nice considering he's a goalkeeper. We've got Tommy Smith, and then of course we've got Deck Steele, and then in the reserves we've got a few other players like Clark, Coulson, Coburn, Howson, of course, and then a few others that I just do not care to mention. So as you can see right here, it is a 4-2-3-1 formation. Of course, we've got one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two full backs, one DM, one central midfielder, and that's very important because you will see soon enough. We've got one cam, one or two wingers or wide midfielders, and then of course one striker up front. So with the Michael Carrick system, of course, you will look to try and press the back line as much as possible, forcing them into a few errors at the back. Of course, with the Michael Carrick system, more or less the number 10 and the striker join up, creating a much needed front four. And what I've noticed with Carrick's system, it's very similar to Pep Guardiola, where he likes to fill all the attacking lanes as possible, or as many of the attacking lanes as possible, if not all of them, by making sure that you have two strikers trying to occupy the centre-backs, you've got a winger occupying each full-back, and it just causes a lot of havoc going forward for the opposition. So more or less, you are looking to try and press that back line, make sure that they try and make a mistake, and if they don't, they'll more or less look to pass it back to the goalkeeper, where you can try and press him, and more times than not, the opposition will look to go long with either a goalkeeper kick or a full-back kick, just trying to play it far away from their goal, and that's when your mid-block comes in play. Of course, it is set at 65, the depth of the team, so the centre-backs, they will more or less be in and around the halfway line. It's a very reassured position for your back line, of course, but more or less, they will look to try and win that ball back and then circulate it back into position, into attacking position, and then try and circulate it back into the box. It's very much a Michael Carrick thing, where you just attack, loads of shots, loads of crosses into the box, and it works out very well. And of course, the width is set to 40. It's a nice happy medium. I always say happy medium, by the way. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I do tend to say that quite a bit, and I do apologize. I'm trying to, extend the vocabulary just a little bit, but more or less, it is a nice happy medium nonetheless, to have a nice wide attack and then just bring it in, hone it in a bit more without the ball, and trying to just bring that midfield slightly more narrow, causing the opposition to try and work their way around you, where your fullbacks will be more than happy to try and catch those wingers off guard and win the ball back as fast as possible as well. As for the build-up play, it is set to balanced. Of course, Michael Carrick, he doesn't like to just have this slow build-up, this 1-2 passing, more or less slowly move the ball up the field. He does like to shift play a little bit more, be a bit more attacking, a bit more high tempo. So you can also look to try and slow the pace of the game down if it is more or less looking to run away from you. But more times than not, you will be looking to have a bit more of a high tempo attacking phase of play with this team. And then, of course, as for chance creation, it is set to forward runs. Now, you can also set it to a possession-based system, but more or less forward runs gets the best out of it. And what I've noticed is it does allow that number 10 to get forward a bit more, also get a bit wider as well, creating that front four system that I was talking about earlier. But more or less, you do want to try and feed those forwards with your wing backs. Of course, like I said earlier as well, this system relies on loads of crosses being fired on into the box, and it works out fairly well with your attacking fullbacks or your attacking wingers, of course. I know that Jones on the right-hand side, he used to be a fullback, and then Carrick more or less shifted him into that right midfield role, where he fires loads of crosses in it, and he'll more or less look to try and hug that right-hand side touchline, just making sure that the width on the right-hand side is hugged by him, and on the left-hand side is more or less going to be your left-sided fullback, of course, and he is going to look to fire crosses in as well. So more or less a very nice, solid 65 for your width going forward. And then, of course, players in the box, like I say, more crosses into the box equals a Michael Carrick type system, a Michael Carrick set of tactics. But more or less, you are looking to have it around 7 or 8. If you want to be more attacking, I'd go with 8. But a 7 is a nice, good, solid game plan to go with. That way you can't get counter-attacked on and broken away and everything like that. But also, you do want your centre forward, of course, occupied with your number 10, you want them in the box, and of course your winger as well. And then obviously, corners and free kicks are set to 4. So starting off with the goalkeeper, of course, with the Michael Carrick system, you need him to be a sweeper keeper. One thing I did notice was that from time to time, to try and alleviate pressure on the defense and maybe on the midfield as well, they would look to try and pass the ball back to the goalkeeper, wait for the opposition to be drawn in, and then fire a big ball over the top into the centre forward or the number 10 or even sometimes the wingers, and just more or less take out the entire opposition's attack in midfield and then try and charge at the defense. That is more or less why the number 10 and the striker stay so high from time to time. So you do have that more or less outlet ball. And of course, he is set to come for crosses to try and be as aerially dominant as possible. Of course, last season it was Zach Steffen who was fairly good. And this season, by the looks of it, Jang, he hasn't been off to the best start, but you know what? I think he will get there. I think for QPR last season, he was fairly good. And I think for Carrick, he will continue to be good, if not develop even more. As for your two centre-backs, of course, I went to my fullback there for no reason. But as for Linehan, he is set to his base set of defensive instructions. But then as for Fry, he is set to join the attack. Now, you do want him to do this from time to time, try and push that midfield pivot slightly higher up. And, of course, try and create a little bit of an overload. So you will look to try and pass the ball into him, and then he will look to drop his shoulder, turn and drop his shoulder, and then charge into the midfield with the ball, creating little overloads in the midfield, if not more in the attack, of course. And also, one thing that does help this system is the fact that Paddy McNair does tend to stay back, so he's not going to be a bombing on fullback. He does have that ability to do so by having a bit of a mixed attack, so he will look to sometimes overlap the likes of Isaiah Jones or invert, but more or less he is looking to try and create that little back three system that we have seen from time to time, with that nice little shape at the back with the one fullback bombing on and the one winger slightly hugging the touchline, allowing the other winger to cut inside a bit more, and that's more or less what you will be seeing with this system going forward. But more times than not, Paddy McNair, he will try and cover the likes of Fry if he is bombing slightly higher up the field. And then, of course, you've got your bombing on fullback who is set to join the attack and overlap, of course. So he will be creating the space on the right hand side, on the left hand side, more or less overlapping Silvera or whoever's on your wing. Of course, it could be Rogers, who knows. But he will look to try and hug that touchline, bomb on, and fire crosses into the box from the left hand side. Moving slightly on now to the midfield, we've got Hackney, who is playing as a central midfielder. So the set of instructions look slightly different, but they more or less try and create the same effect as what the DM position creates. Although the only reason I have gone with Hackney being the CM is because when Fry looks to bomb on into the midfield, Hackney will look to try and get slightly higher up, of course. Hackney is set to stay back while attacking, balanced crossing runs, of course, so he will be in and around that box area, more or less on the edge of the box, waiting to try and collect the ball, recycle possession, and so on, as per what normal CMs do. Of course, normal interceptions will be on. He is set to cover the wing and, of course, stick to position. So more times than not, you do want your two midfielders, your midfield pivots, to more or less stay central and try and, be a bit of an outlet, try and recycle possession through them. And talking about the midfield partner, of course, he is set to cut passing and stay back while attacking, normal interceptions, stick to position, and then cover the wing. So more or less just set to stick and make sure that they are protecting that backline as best as possible. And then as for Rogers, moving slightly higher up the field, of course, he is set to his basic defensive support. Now, I have set it to that because sometimes you do see the number 10 drop slightly deeper just to get onto the ball. Of course, in the gameplay above, you do see that a fair amount. If it's not the number 10, it will be the striker. Of course, he is set to stay on the edge of the box, so he will also look to try and get in the box because we have set it to 7, so it forces him to get slightly deeper than normal, but it does do a great job in replicating what you see the number 10 in a Michael Carrick system do all the time. And of course, he is set to drift wide, so he will look to play on either side of force. He will look to maybe go left, go right, but he does look to link up with him at a much higher level than what a normal number 10 does tend to do. I mean, you could more or less describe this as a centre forward position without it actually being an official centre forward position. And then, of course, he is said to have normal interceptions on. Now, starting with the left-hand side, it is slightly different to the right-hand side, and that is because of the fullback transitions and everything. But more or less, Silvera or the left-hand side, they will be looking to come back on defense, of course, supporting the likes of Engel, who does tend to bomb on further up. He will look to cut inside, and he will look to get in behind, of course. And then, of course, he will look to try and make those arcing runs to the back post for potential crosses. But more or less, he will try and play as an inside forward, whereas your right-hand side is a more out-and-out type winger. He will look to come back on defense, trying to help the likes of Paddy McNair, who won't always look to bomb on, but just in case, trying to pick up that extra man, of course. and then he will look to try and stay wide. So he's going to be the guy creating the width on the right-hand side for your team. And then, of course, he is set to get in behind and get into the box, of course. So he will look to try and make attacking runs as well. But mainly, he will look to try and cross that ball from the right-hand side, whereas Engel will look to cross that ball from the left-hand side. And finally, with ending things off with the striker, of course, Force here is set to have a balanced width, so he will look to sometimes drift wide, but he will also look to stay central. But more importantly, he will play as a false 9, and now you don't really expect that, especially with the number 10 behind you. You would think, okay, well maybe it's going to create a little bit of two players being in the same position, more or less trying to play the same position, but it really doesn't. I really do like it because then it allows Rodgers to be a bit more attacking with his play. And like I said, create that front four that you do see more times than not with the Michael Carrick system. So, of course, he's going to play as a false 9, but his interceptions are going to be very aggressive, and he is more or less going to look to try and trigger the press when there is a mistake that is made in the back line, of course, or by the goalkeeper. And more times than not, you did see last season, especially with the Carrick system, that they would try and press, starting off with the striker, of course. And then, of course, he is set to come back on defense. He is going to drop very, very deep, collect the ball, receive it, and then move on forward, pass it into your attacking midfielder or potentially your wingers, and they will look to try and cross the ball into the box. So you will see from time to time that your striker, or Force in this case, he will look to try and make late runs into the box, opposed to just consistently being the guy in the middle of the box waiting for the cross. He will look to try and pass it off to the winger and then run into the box, of course, because he does have a very deep starting position. So yes, my people, I have done it. I have recreated the Michael Carrick system, the most realistic Michael Carrick system that there is for FIFA 23 at least, on YouTube. So if you can, do me the biggest favor, hit the thumbs up button, or not, I don't mind. But more importantly, if you are watching my videos and you are enjoying them, thumbs up button please, and of course that big red one, subscribe. That would be absolutely fantastic. But until the next time, my dudes, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.